Hi guys, White Warlock here. In this video I'll show you guys how I level all my new characters. I'll talk you through what skill gems you want to use, the items, jewels, passive trees and some Ascendancy tips as well. The setup does cost you some currency, but it's very much worth it. It really smoothens the leveling experience. You can always use some less optimal gear and make it quite cheaper, but the total cost shouldn't be more than 2 divines. So first for the skill gems, before we can get the gas arrow, you want to use lightning arrow, lightning rod, and orb of storms as your main damaging skills. So I have lightning arrow supported by martial tempo, close combat, and pierce, and lightning rod with scattershot, primal armament, and concentrated effect, and orb of storms with chain, overabundance, and unleash. So the way it works, basically, while doing the campaign, while just doing normal monsters, you can basically kill everything with your lightning arrow. And then for big rares or bosses, you can like put down an orb of storms and then just spam your lightning rod to basically trigger them all the time. And then you just deal a shit ton of damage against the bosses. What you can also do is use freezing salvo as an extra small damage boost and a nice cold damage thing so you can freeze your bosses. You should support that with Hourglass, Magnified effect, and Ice Bite. Um, Hourglass is used because you have to wait for that 12 additional missiles anyways, so there's no reason not to use Hourglass. For your spirit skills, I would use Herald of Thunder, supported by Innervate and Lightning Infusion. And when you get more spirit, you can use Herald of Ash as well. And if you get even more spirit, maybe on your gear, if you use different gear setup than I do, you can also use Cannibalism and Precision Support. Don't really need those, but those are just like additional. You can also use Vitality or Clarity if you want, but you won't have enough spirit anyways. But if you have a different setup, you can also decide to do that. What you can do is in your weapon swap, you can use a shield charge with the shield Crest of Adura. This grants the shield charge a lot of cooldown reduction, so you can just spam your shield charge basically. And yeah, you should support it with Ingenuity to increase the cooldown recovery rate even more. And then once you can get Gas Arrow, you can just replace your Lightning Arrow, Lightning Rod, and Orb of Storm setup. You don't need to use it. You can only just use Gas Arrow during the whole campaign, and you can support it with Scattershot, Primal Armament, and Martial Tempo. The way it works is if you have the Radiant Grief helmet, everything in your presence, every enemy in your presence is ignited, and when you use Gas Arrow, it just immediately explodes on those enemies and deals a shit ton of damage. But you should only use that once you can actually get Gas Arrow, obviously. So for the gear, I'm using a Widow Hill with as much bonus gains from equipped Quiver. So this one was 1 divine, but you can get a lower roll, even a max roll, just without having it increased by corruption for a few exalts. And I put increased elemental damage with attacks soul cores in it. I'm not sure if that's the correct one, but from like DPS tooltip testing, it seems to be. But yeah, once we get the path of building for Path of Exile 2, then you can definitely test out which one is the best for you. Before we go Gas Arrow, I'm using Crown of the Victor. This just grants level of all skills, and the life and mana per enemy killed gained is also really nice. For our Amulet, I'm using Sure-Footed Sigil with allocating Blur. That's if you're not using that's mostly if you're using Witch or Sorceress to level, but you can also allocate something else once you've gotten to Blur. Blur is this one. It just increases your movement speed and grants some dexterity, so it's just a nice movement speed buff for the campaign. You can also use this one, the Rondo of Fragility, for the 46% increased damage. And the 30% increased skill speed is also pretty nice. For the body armor, I am using a corrupted 3 slot Fox Shade. Fox Shade just grants you a lot of movement speed. Make sure to use your flask if you're not at full life to get that 10% increased movement speed. Also, the 30 dexterity is also pretty nice. For the rings, before level 26, I used Dodri's Damning. for mana per enemy killed and a black heart, and I changed the black heart for the death rush when I get level 26 because onslaught gives you a nice skill speed and especially movement speed bonus. So whenever you kill, you get even faster. So for the belt, I would personally use Meganor's Girdle. You can also just use a normal rare with resistances if you care about resistances. If you play, because this is a ranged build, if you play defensive enough, you don't really need to care about resistances too much. And also we use the Soul Cores to get plus to all resistances. And here, this one gives Fire Res, and I got Cold and Lightning Res runes as well. So yeah, resistances are pretty okay, and it grants a little bit of resistances. But the best thing about this is that grants 50 strength, which is a lot of life, but also makes your requirements a lot easier, especially for stuff like Herald of Ash. Then the boots are just unique boots that give you a lot of movement speed. So from level 1 you use this one. This grants 10%. Then for level 11 you grant Wanderlust, which also makes you that you can't be slowed, but this grants 20% increased movement speed. Then level 33 you can use Bushwhack for 25% movement speed, and then from level 52 onwards you can use Beetle Bite for 30% movement speed, and then later on you can use rare boots if you want, but this just makes it simple. I use 2 soul cores for the elemental resistance on each one of those, but I didn't bother using it on the boost because you replace with Wanderlust after just a few levels. You can use the shield for the shield charge, obviously. And I recommend after you've done your first character and you've done the last trial, you can use a setup like this for your relics. I just recommend getting a maximum honor and honor resistance. These are very cheap. You can also get more expensive ones with merchants, price reduction, and additional merchant choices, but something like this is fine. I'm just using the 70% increased defenses because I used it on a energy shield, and then the 70% increased defense also increases the energy shield, so that's really nice. You can use a better one than this, but I just didn't want to spend more currency on relics because the most important thing is just honor resistance. This one grants a little bit of maximum honor resistance, and this just grants additional maximum honor as well. So for the quivers and the gloves, those ones I replace a lot. As you can see, I have one for level 0, from level 8, level 9, level 24, level 28, another one level 28. This is just, I want to test out which one has more DPS. Then 35, 44, and a level 60 as well for when you get to the end of the campaign on early mapping. And for the gloves, it's as well, you just want the more damage. Especially for the quivers, it's very important to get flat damage, which then gets increased by Widow Hail. If you have enough like mana gain on a quiver, you can also try to get a +2 to level of all projectile skills on your quiver, but you'll notice that it costs a lot of mana. Gas Arrow costs a lot of mana anyways, but increasing the level of all projectile skills, especially with this 2, because then it also gets increased with the Widow Heal again, and with your passive tree, if you can get there. Those are these nodes, so the 30%, 10%, and another 30% here. Bonuses from your quiver, you get a lot of levels, and this one might be a little bit too harsh on your mana. And then later on you can like change your gloves for more resistances if you need it, but just like fire damage and cold damage and lightning damage and even physical damage to attacks, just all of those are nice to have. So now I'll talk about the passive trees. All but the Witch and Sorcerer passive trees look very much alike. You want to focus on elemental damage, fire damage, attack damage, and especially the quiver effect nodes on the tree. Those are these ones. For the Witch and the Sorceress, that's just not possible. They are way too far away for them. So I'll show you that one as well. But yeah, here the quiver nodes, you really want to take that as fast as possible. As an example, I'll show the monk first. So you just get damage and attack speed here, some nice extra lightning damage so you can shock more easily, some skill speed and mana regen is always nice, and life on kill is also pretty nice to have. These damage nodes here are also really good, especially if you have cold and lightning damage on your gloves and quiver, or you take them later in the Ascendancy. But yeah, you really want to go first to go here to get your quiver bonuses, especially if you have a really good quiver, then it gets so much better, especially if you have also a good Widow heal like I do. But yeah, these quiver effects are one of the most important, if not the most important things you can get early. And then stuff like that, harness the elements, which like if you have elemental ailments, you always have ignite, so it's always at least 15% increased damage. But if you hit something once and it doesn't immediately die, then it probably will be shocked and chilled as well, maybe even frozen. So yeah, there's just a lot more damage. It's basically the same as this, but this one's a little bit further away, so you can take these 3 nodes later. Yeah, the ones you can easily get as well are these. These are pretty good. And then you can go here and you can maybe use your jewel sockets. If you have a jewel that gives quiver effect, I would definitely recommend taking that, but that's quite expensive and quite rare. So you don't need to take those. You can also just take damage with bows, attack damage, and attack speed, and maybe even movement speed if you want. Then you can take these bow attack speed and bow attack damage nodes here. And as well, you can get acceleration, so more movement speed and skill speed here, and also escape velocity early. Getting that early is also a nice extra movement speed. So this is the monk tree I'm using. All the trees are down below in the description, just so you can check them out yourself. But yeah, I would recommend taking the quiver notes first, and then yeah, where you're going, take those notes first. The order doesn't really matter that much. This is a quite big tree for the monk, 108 passives. For the witch and the sorceress, it's a lot less. Um, but afterwards, you can already switch. You can switch earlier for the witch and sorceress. You can always switch to spark if you want to, or you can just go for more damage nodes. Like you can grab these fire nodes here. Maybe you go fire or ignite here, or fire here. But yeah, for the witch, it's just skipping all of these. Like these are minion nodes, we don't use them. Then you can get fire penetration, and then here these damage nodes are the most important. Get these first, then you can get the fire penetration. Then take this whole tree for elemental damage and cast speed. Well, a little bit of attack speed, not cast speed. You can also get cast speed, but obviously you have no use for that. And then take all these attack damage nodes here. And then you can take the fire node here. This explosion is pretty cool. Obviously 5% chance is not that much, but it's nice to have. I like having it. Then you can take like these area damage if you want to. The area will be reduced, so it might be a little bit too small for you, but I think this is good enough. For the sorceress, it's basically the same, but in the sorceress you can actually take Path of Flame for increased fire damage, because on the witch they are different. Then for the mercenary, you take a little bit on your early tree, because just nice projectile damage here anyways. And then you path here, you get these quiver nodes, and then you can take these nodes here close as well. You don't really need to blur, because you probably get that on your amulet, but it is obviously a little bit better to take a different anoint and then just take the blur nodes anyways. If you don't want to switch, then you can take other things first. Take the elemental damage nodes first here, and then take these last, or you can just not care about having taken an additional passive you don't need. For the warrior, it's basically the same. You just want to get to this area as fast as possible, but here you just take some nodes in the process to get some attack speed, and then just go here, take these nodes as well. Then go here and take these quiver nodes. You can skip the blur stuff as well. Just take these 2 attributes here. But this is like the full tree. And yeah, for things you can not either anoint blur or anoint other things that grant damage or movement speed. And then for the ranger, here is one that for the ranger, you definitely want to get a different anoint. Blur is so close for you that it's not really worth it to not take it. But yeah, you can take any damage nodes. If you're like sticking for lightning damage and you're very rich, you can always get lightning rod. Obviously, these anoints are very expensive and probably just not worth it. But you can just take any lightning damage or fire damage nodes, whatever you want. Also movement speed or projectile damage or attack damage. All of them are fine. For Ascendancies, just take the ones that deal that get you damage. Like for Invoker, cold damage and lightning damage is nice, and then the Unbound Avatar skill. For the Acolyte, you have chaos damage here. Then for the Witch, you don't really have anything. For the Infernalist, but you can take this one, which is okay, and then maybe take some extra spirit. You will reserve your life, but that's not that much of a problem. You can always take like the Loyal Hellhound, and then maybe support it with like minion health and resistance and stuff like that. For the Blood Mage, I would recommend not taking any passives at all. Just stick with either not ascending, just skip that, or just grab the nodes and just don't use them. Maybe you can just take like the 3% maximum life and then do not take Sangromancy. That just really sucks, and there's no really good way because we don't do spell damage. We can't really use this, so yeah, I would just use like get the 1 point for increased maximum life and then just leave it like that. Obviously, it's like Blood Mage is kind of hard to level with at all, let alone with an attack build. So yeah, for Blood Mage, that kind of sucks. For Sorceress, you have the Stormweaver. You can just take Strike twice for a double shock, and then Shaper of Storms if you don't shock that easily. Otherwise, you can always just take heavy snows as well. These like Arcane Surge is not useful because we don't deal with spell damage, and yeah, we don't use spells, so Tempest Scholar is also useless. And we don't really use exposure as well, so Scarmint's also not useful. Then for Chronomancer, you can just take time freeze, which is probably the best. You can also, if you want more defense, you can use the recoup. Cast speed is not useful, and yeah, the presence slowed a little bit is okay, but I would just take the time freeze and then probably now and again um, for the cooldown. For the mercenary, for witch hunter, you can take whatever you want. You can do culling strike, which is pretty nice. You can take the concentration nodes for more damage. The others, or you can take the explosion, which is also really good. Kind of just whatever you want. Also, if you don't want to respec for your build, that's also okay. For gemling, the quality of skills is pretty nice and the level of all skills, but you need to worry about that one because you might like the mana cost might be too high, and that's why Advanced Thaumaturgy is actually pretty nice if you can fit with the attribute requirements. For Warrior, for Titan, you really want Hulking Form. This is one of the only useful ones, but it's really, really good. Then you can also take Mysterious Lineage or maybe even Crushing Impacts. Obviously, we don't have armor from our body armor, and we don't use Slam skills, so those are the only useful ones. But especially like Hulking Form is really good, so definitely take that one. And for Warbringer, you can take the break enemy armors if you want to. Obviously, for Glass Cloud, you deal elemental damage, so this doesn't really matter. Otherwise, you can use whatever you want. Like this, again, this is also not one that's really good for our build, but this is just a leveling build, right? So the Ascendancy is the one that matters for what build you actually want to play later on. And then for the Ranger, for Deadeye, you want point blank. Extra projectile is pretty nice, but Tailwind is also really good for extra movement speed. So I would say Tailwind first, point blank then, and if you go for a third, you can get the extra projectile. But yeah, more movement speed is really good. So Marines is pretty nice to have. And then for Pathfinder, there's not much useful there. You can get these movement speed things, or you can just take the extra passive nodes, which is probably the best for now, because like you don't need flask things and poisonous concoction. We're not using concoctions, right? So yeah, they get the passive points and then movement speeds. All right, I'll post as I said, I'll post every tree in the description and on the comments as a pinned post. If you got any other questions, please let me know. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy the new year and see you guys later. Bye.